When others are presenting the other topics, do you want them to open up their video and then shut it down when they're done?
Well, they'll have their PowerPoint that they'll be sharing.
Okay.
So they can absolutely open up the video if they would like to have their video on while they're presenting their document. That's fine. It will show up on the right-hand side. Just if you're not presenting, you can even have yours open up right now if you choose to. It's just if we have too many videos open at once, it's almost impossible.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, thank you again. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services, the statewide policy and planning committee meeting. It looks as if right now we have 75 participants. That is a great turnout. This meeting is held a little bit earlier than what we normally do for this particular quarter. Wanted to kind of get things done during the current executive order. And so thank you all for kind of rearranging your schedules and participating in this statewide meeting. And so a couple of housekeeping items that I wanted to cover. Normally when we're all together, we go around and do our introductions, but if you have joined through WebEx, Kirby and Avis and Amy, they all have a list of who has joined. However, if you have not joined through WebEx via computer and you have joined just through the phone, if you would please send an email before the end of the day to Kirby, kirby.fi@tn.gov, and let her know that you were in attendance to our meeting today. Also, a couple of other things that I want to cover is just as a reminder, this meeting is taking place through WebEx and conference call and is being recorded per Governor Lee's executive order number 60. And the meeting recording will be posted to the department website sometime shortly after this meeting for people to be able to go back and view. Just another reminder, because we've had a few more people join, if you would, please make sure that you mute your phones, your computers. So we have several presentations and some very good presentations today to be covered. And also right now, if you would also stop your video, we have a presentation later that we will all need to be able to focus on that one presentation. If you are given a presentation, if you choose, you can open up your video, and then we will go ahead and listen to your presentation. Kirby has all of the slides to be able to present, Kirby and Amy and Avis, and so when you're done, you'll go ahead and end that. Just one last or another reminder of muting. Everybody take a quick check and make sure your devices are muted. And as questions, when the presentations begin, if you have questions, please send those through the chat box feature. And Avis and Amy and Kirby will pull those out, and then we'll, at the end of each presentation, ask the presenter those questions that were put through the chat box feature. And so we'll get the answers to those questions. At this point, definitely I want to say again how much I appreciate everybody coming to this meeting. I feel like we get a lot done and accomplished and get some good information out there through this meeting. This is a great collaborative of people to make things happen in our state as relates to mental health and substance abuse issues across our state. And And right now we have 76 participants. And so, Kirby, I'm assuming that we have a quorum. So before we move forward, I would, if that is true, Kirby, we would go ahead and I'd like to see if there's a motion out there to approve the minutes that were sent out in the email and the invite for this meeting.
Debbie Hillen moved to approve.
All right, any second out there?
Ricky Harris, second.
All right, thank you all. So with the first and the second, if there are any, anyone opposing, if you would, to put that through the chat. Otherwise, we will see, approve those minutes moving forward. Okay. At this point, let's move to go right into, is Commissioner Williams with us? We would like to get an update from the department.
Hi, Kim. I actually just got a text. Commissioner Williams is wrapping up a phone call. So we might need to, and she'll join us shortly. We'll need to move forward with the regional council committee reports. And if she joins in the midst of that, we might just need to interrupt it because I'm sure she might have other things going on.
Okay, that sounds great. So just let me know if she's joined, and then we will move forward. Let's go ahead and have a report out from Region 1, please. Region 1, are you here? If so, you may be on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this is Region 1, Tim Perry, and we, Region 1 met on October the 13th via Zoom with 15 in attendance. We did elect some following positions that were vacant. Vonda Wagner to the Adult Committee Vice Chair, Melissa Birdwell to the CNY Committee Vice Chair, and also Melissa Birdwell as Assistant Secretary to the Council, to the Region 1 Council. We continue to remind members of the update to our enrollment and application for membership to the Council that we're continuing to progress with. We did have a presentation by Melissa Birdwell on an update for Behavioral Health Safety Net for Kids. She reported on Frontier Health hiring the outreach coordinator, Sarah DeAndre. And then we had a presentation by Christy Tipton, who gave an update on the regional crisis services for Region 1 and the update on the COVID-19 hotline for Region 1. We also had reports given by United Healthcare MCO, TCCY, and Disability Rights Tennessee. Kirby was present and gave an update on the department, and then members were reminded to continue thinking of gaps and needs in our region, especially related to the issues affecting us due to the pandemic, that we may be able to relate to our needs assessment. Our next meeting will be February the 2nd, 2021.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate that. All right, at this time, if we could have Region 2 to give their report.
This is Amy Delinky with Region 2. We have moved our meeting to October 14th, and we had 28 members in attendance. The group wanted to thank the department for the support and approval for continuing to allow the telemeeting for that, as our members, through an informal poll, said they were not comfortable meeting in person until at least the spring of 2021. At our meeting, we provided the needs assessment worksheets and had our committee reports, as well as asking those committees to start working on identifying their needs. Our children's committee has two new co-chairs, and their focus at this time is to expand membership, and they were going through some of the accomplishments that have taken place over the last fiscal year, and specifically wanted to note that they felt that there have been a lot of success, especially with the expansion of the school-based behavioral health liaisons and the behavioral safety net grant. The goal for that committee is working on their needs assessment and then working on getting social workers into the emergency departments, as well as continuing access for telehealth services and other areas of concern during the pandemic. The committee had a concern that at this point there's a 6-month wait for admission to specialized residential treatment for adolescents, which falls in line with our identified need from last year for our children and youth subcommittee. They will meet again November 5th. Our adult committee met again. They're working on their needs assessment as well. They're going to be focusing on permanent housing and transitional living for those coming out of correctional facilities, especially those with sexual offender housing challenges. And then they're also looking at a lapse of getting 10 care benefits restarted for patients after they're released from correctional facilities. Ben Harrington's found some information that may be included in our needs assessment associated with that. Our legislative committee has not met, but they are looking at if the telehealth services provided by non-licensed therapists to 10 care patients will be expanded. And then our substance use or misuse committee has not met as well. We did have a drug take back event, and it was noted about the suicide and overdose deaths that are increasing in the area, and that there are more folks seeking services for the first time. Some ongoing concerns for that group are related to recovery housing, as it seems to be in short supply. And then from our announcements, one of the big ones that I'm sure a lot of folks on this call go to is the Mental Health Association of East Tennessee Psychiatric Symposium. That one's coming up. And then through the Knox County Health Department, the department has, given us a grant to allow for an overdose fatality review team to get started out here. Then we have Peninsula's Artsclamation event, which will be online, and Caterpillar Kids Camp coming up. So there's a lot happening out here, and we're really excited and grateful for the opportunity to report that out. Thanks.
Thanks, Amy. That's a lot of great work, and great to hear both Region 1 and 2 are already working diligently on their needs assessment. Those are very important things that we work towards. All right, Region 3, please.
Hi, this is Gail Lodato in Region 3. Region 3's goal is to be like Region 2, just so you know, with our reporting. We met on October 15th, and we had 23 in attendance for that meeting. It was also a virtual meeting, which I think makes people a lot more comfortable to continue to participate. All three of our committees, our adult committee, children's committee, and legislative committee, had met in between our last group meeting, regional meeting, and they are both, the adult committee and the children's committee are both already looking at the needs assessment. The adults committee is looking at some barriers to substance abuse and other health disparities. They're looking to do a Survey Monkey to send out regionally, and their hope is to do that in January so that we have some data. Our children's committee has identified a couple of things. One is respite care, and the other is similar to what was mentioned with Region 2, which is our adolescent services, and looking at the needs and the gaps in those services. We also, as a whole, are looking to make some concerted efforts to increase the northern regions of Region 3. And I hope there's some people on the call. Some of the agencies I may not know for certain, but I know Volunteer is one, and Centerstone is one that's up in Nashville that's also down here. We're looking to increase a lot more of our rural partners up in that area. So if anyone has someone that is in one of those counties that's in Region 3 and they might be interested in joining our committee meetings, we would love to have them. And something that I thought was really exciting is that our legislative committee has asked to join the adult committee and the children's committee so that they can start working on their legislative components of the needs that we're identifying in those committees. So that was really exciting for us to kind of make that connection and put that together. Regionally, there's a couple of things that I think deserve some recognition. The Mental Health Cooperative has started their assertive community treatment here in Hamilton County, and they're getting referrals and picking up clients, and we're real excited for that high-risk population to have that intensive community-based services. Along with that, the Hamilton County's Sheriff's Department has implemented they've been working on their Fuse project, but now they're actually moving forward with housing options. They've actually identified some properties, and so that's really exciting too, to increase housing options for those here in our county. All of the community mental health centers have been actively involved with Hamilton County schools and trying to support the students and the families, as well as the teachers and administrators, with all of the additional stress that we are experiencing with response to the pandemic and virtual learning, homeschooling, and all these things that are kind of new to our families. And again, all of us are attending weekly and bi-weekly meetings to engage with Hamilton County schools, which is, again, very exciting for us here. I think those are the only things, except that we are meeting again on January 14th, 2021.
Great information, Gail. I think you're doing pretty good. You're right there with Region 2. A lot of work going on, and so thank you for that report. At this time, we will take a break on the reports. I did notice that Commissioner Williams has just joined us, and so glad to have you here. And you probably got a pretty busy schedule. So if you would like, we would let you go ahead and give us the department updates.
Kim, thank you so much, but actually I'm able to listen in and would love to hear the rest of the regional updates, and then I'm more than happy to talk after that time. So again, thanks for stopping, but I'll listen in to the other updates because I have time to do that, and then I'll deliver some remarks.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kim.
All right, that moves us to Region 4. Is someone here from Region 4? If so, you may be on mute.
Yes, I was on mute. Thank you very much. This is Robin Nobling from Region 4. And Region 4 held its meeting on October 26th, this past Monday, with 29 people in attendance. New members and those on boarding were in attendance, representing the Metro Nashville Health Department, Disability Rights of Tennessee, Hope and Healing, Inc., as were new representatives from Amir Group. Membership continues to grow despite the pandemic. We always, though, welcome new members and especially additional family members and persons with lived experience. We would like to acknowledge the work of our legislative committee led by Elliot Pinsley of Pinpoint Consultants. This group continues to look at the development of a survey to measure workforce shortages through a partnership with the Department of Health, and they have some other additional information they're working on, but that is the primary focus right now. Shara Biggs, who is the Criminal Justice Liaison Services for the Mental Health Cooperative, and Evelyn Yergin, Director of Advocacy Services at MHC, are in the process of working with others right now on our adult committee to generate their priorities. In keeping with last year's group informed intention to focus on the needs assessment, we were very fortunate once again to have Julie Thatcher of the Metro Nashville Health Department join us. She joined us with her coworker Heather Snell in facilitating a mini consensus workshop. So that's what we spent the majority of the meeting on. Julie led a process that evokes suggestions from everyone present. We want to make sure that all the voices, even the quiet ones, are heard. So we appreciated the input of our MCOs in the process from their perspective and knowledge, in addition to everyone else that was present. We generated some very good responses with a really nice eclectic group. So there were a broad variety. Robin Nobling of Davidson County and Angie Thompson, also of the Health Department, are assisting in the process. Our next step is going to take and distill the priorities that were and suggestions and prioritize them by volume. We'll take a look at those and then come back. Robin and Angie will communicate the findings in the next step with the council members. We really wanted to thank Kirby Fye of the department for assisting in the technical considerations of the group process. And we wanted to thank everyone that participated. We expect that our next meeting will be that first Wednesday in February, as usually scheduled, but we did not promote that at this time because we want to make sure that any changes going forward are captured prior to announcement of a meeting. And that is what we have for Region 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Again, just a lot of things going on across the state, and even through the midst of COVID, everybody continues to do some great work, and appreciate that from across the state. And we've had several more people join. Looks like we have about 85 participants. And so just another reminder, as we've had some new people join, if you would please mute your phones or your computers so that we can hear the presentations without any of the back noise. So again, thank you. At this point, let's move to Region 5. If you would give your report out to the committee.
Good morning. This is Debbie from Region 5. We met via teleconference on October the 22nd. Our special guest, and where we focused most of our time during this meeting, was done by Kimberly Ladd, the director of the Murray County Prevention Coalition. She was talking about the upcoming ACEs toolkits that's being designed for community coalitions that'll be rolling out soon. She talked about this being a collaborative effort with the Coalition for Homeless in the greater New York City area to help with the development of this. And part of the elements of the strategic prevention framework was this cannot be cookie cutter. Each coalition is going to have to craft strategies that's tailored to their communities within the coalition. The highlight of this toolkit is going to be assessment. There'll be capacity building, planning, implementation, and evaluation. The goal and the effort is, by working together, we can help create communities where every child can thrive. So that was, and she will, once this toolkit has been developed, she's going to come back and share more and train us and help us to look at what else needs to take place within our communities. The second part that was discussed during our meeting was the Project Rural Recovery Mobile Health Clinic. Buffalo Valley and Helen Ross McNabb are partners with the state in this, and I know Jessica's going to talk about this later, but this was brought to the attention of Region 5, and that Lawrence, Lewis, Perry, Marshall, and Wayne County in Region 5 will be the recipients of this service. And this bus will be going to local communities to provide integrated medical and behavioral health services. And so I'll let the rest of that go, and I'll let Jessica talk about it. But we're really excited to be a part of that. Our attendance was low, and I think part of it had to do with the fact of the quick change of the meeting. And our next and we had a report from the department, and our next meeting tentatively has been set for February the 4th. And that's it.
Thank you, Debbie. Again, like I said, across the board, everybody's working on the needs assessment and working really hard towards that. All right, at this point, we'll move straight into Region 6.
Good morning, everybody. This is Richard Barber in Region 6. We met October 13th via WebEx. A shout out to Kirby for helping us get that set up. We had 16 members attending. We started the meeting with reading from the organizational guidelines, the purpose of regional planning and policy councils. Moved on, Kirby gave the department report for us. Barry Moore reported on our Children's Committee and the Tennessee Suicide Prevention Network. Then we had a conversation about the proposed language change relative to the makeup of regional councils, and we thank Kurt Hipple for his input there and clearing some of that up for us. Matt Marshall of the United Way gave an update, and he's also with the Regional COVID Task Force, updated us on some of the COVID statistics for Region 6. Then Jason Postaway, who is the Chi-2 Regional Housing Coordinator, presented the program on his program and how he can connect providers and developers to develop housing, affordable housing for those in recovery. And Sabrina Anderson gave us an update on the 3 virtual learning sites that the Boys and Girls Club have set up in the area. Our next meeting will be January 12th, 2021. And it's good to see everybody. Kinda. That's it.
Thank you, Richard. Appreciate that. Again, good work going on. All right, moves us to Region 7.
Good morning, everyone. This is Bartholomew. Hope everyone can hear me. I've had problems with my WebEx, so if you can't, stop me. Yesterday, Region 7 met via WebEx. We met at 11:30. We had 23 members and participating on the call. We opened up with the welcome introductions and an approval of minutes. Kirby was in attendance and gave updates from the state, and along with Avis, and we decided to do something a little bit different. Before the meeting started last week, we decided that we needed to find out how the providers were doing. So often we get caught up talking about our members and our patients that we don't really ask to see how the providers are doing. So what we did was the executive committee for the region, we led a discussion on how people are doing with the new normals that are happening. Several of the members, several of the people on the call, they shared, including myself, from a professional standpoint on how difficult this has been to try to take care of our loved ones and to take care of the people that we serve from a screen, along with some of the very personal dealings that we were having, people getting sick, being diagnosed with COVID, just several different chasms that were being presented over time. It was really emotional, for lack of a better word, but it was really helpful. Towards the end of the call, Avis and along with other of the participants shared some great tips on how to cope, how to transition to the next level, how to adapt to our ever-changing world, and how to provide the best services for our members moving forward. It ended on a positive note, an excellent note, to be honest. And I think people came out rejuvenated. We also, towards the end of the meeting, we started prepping and getting ready for our January meeting, which will be on the 26th of 2021, to talk about our needs assessment. The meeting was adjourned a little bit earlier than the 1:30 meeting, but nonetheless, we feel like we got a lot accomplished and a lot of healing was done. And that's the report from Region 7.
Thank you, Bartholomew. Really glad to hear that, taking time out to think about providers and, what their needs are through these difficult times and trying to make sure that we are taking care of them as as they turn around and take care of our most vulnerable population here in Tennessee. So thanks for bringing that to the forefront. All right, let's move into Candace Allen with the Adult Committee.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Yes, the Adult Committee met on October the 14th via WebEx, and Dr. Monty Burks provided a presentation on faith-based initiatives, which was just wonderful. And a lot of ideas kind of came from that, a lot of collaborative ideas, talking about maybe partnering with Navigators and other services that are involved in these issues. We also talked about the upcoming needs assessments. We reviewed some of the proposals that were put forth last year involving transitional housing, especially coming from hospitals and jails. Recovery housing was one of the ones that we had put forth. And again, the workforce development issues and harm reduction kind of campaign and education around those. And so we're also scheduled to again meet on January the 13th, 2021. Thank you.
Thanks, Candace. All right, let's hear from the Children's Committee. Ricky, you have a report for us?
I do. It's brief. Due to the scheduling, we have not had our meeting yet for this quarter, but it is November the 4th. And we will discuss, and I encourage any of you who can make the call, please join us, because we're going to discuss just how the pandemic is affecting children and their education and kind of how all those factors play together with their mental health. And then we're going to discuss among providers just sort of what everyone's looking at in terms of returning to some sense of normalcy. So we need all the voices that we can get to join us for that meeting on the 4th.
Thank you, Ricky. All right, that takes us to Dina. If you would, could you give us a report from the Consumer Advisory Board?
Yes, thank you, Kim, and good morning, everyone. The Consumer Advisory Board meets the first Friday of each month via WebEx, and we would like to report that we heard presentations from the following resource speakers. In September, it was National Suicide Prevention Month, so we had Misty Light, who is the interim director and the Zero Suicide Director for the Tennessee Suicide Prevention Network. And October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So we had Kathy Walsh, who is the Executive Director of the Tennessee Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence, as our resource speakers. And we were inspired by recovery stories from the following: Carrie Menifee, who is a CPRS and the East Tennessee Wellness and Recovery Specialist for Amera Group. We also had Greg Bennett, who is a CPRS, the team leader and the crisis care consultant at Centerstone. We are still setting aside some time each and every month to share wellness tips and just support one another. And as of the October 2nd meeting, we began actually doing some wellness activities during our meetings, such as eliciting the relaxation response, chair yoga, attitude of gratitude, and positive affirmations. We also wanted to let you all know that we held our CPRS conference, Roaring into the Future with 2020 Vision, on October 9th via Zoom. It was a roaring success, and we are very proud and happy about how well it turned out. Approximately 300 participants from across the state were able to join. The chat box feature provided an opportunity for presenters and participants to interact, and many participants reported that that they felt the pre-recorded sessions were all happening live. Replays are posted for viewing on the tn.gov website, so you can find that there. And we are continuing to utilize the WebEx platform for our monthly meetings until further notice. Finally, we wanted to let you all know that we have 4 membership openings, one in Region 1 for a person with lived experience in mental illness, one in Region 2 for a person with lived experience in mental illness, and one in Region 4 for a person with lived experience in mental illness. And of course, if you are interested in more information about the CAB, please feel free to contact me, Dina Savanos, at csavanos@tamho.org, or you can get in touch with Haley, Lisa Reagan, or Michelle Webster. And our next meeting is November 6th from 9 to 11 Central Time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dina. Again, appreciate all those reports from across the state. It is so good to hear that we here in Tennessee are not sitting back idle through this pandemic, that just to hear all the proactive things and all the things that are still going on as it relates to Suicide Prevention Month, because we realize that through this time that, you know, as they mentioned earlier, the effects that it has on our vulnerable population across Tennessee through this pandemic. And we, you know, I know many of us as providers see that those numbers, you know, people are reaching out every day and those numbers are increasing. And so again, with that, we appreciate the support with the department and being able to be right there with us to help us through. I know that yesterday, one of the meetings I was on with our system command, it was reported that yesterday was the highest number of our COVID hospitalizations across the state. So, you know, we have that up and down with the COVID. And so it's just still great to hear everybody out there and still being proactive and doing what we can to meet those needs of that population. So with that said, I'll just move straight into Commissioner Williams. I'm sure you've got some great information to share with us. So I will turn it over to you.
Kim, thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to give some updates. There are some questions that I was asked to speak to, and I will at the end of giving the update I'm going to go over. As many of you guys have alluded to, our provider network has been legendary during COVID-19, and there's all kinds of data that points to that. There was a study that just came out where 41 states responded to questions about what they had or had not done during the COVID pandemic to date. And of those 41 states, half actually closed access to their inpatient hospitals for psychiatric emergency inpatient. We were a state that did not. Can't say enough about our Regional Mental Health Institute leadership that totally came together. And then, of course, the leadership of Ty Thornton, who's Chief of Staff with them, with Heather Gunderson, who many of you have worked with because she's been very instrumental in getting PPE out to all of you that have needed it. So what my report is going to go over is what have we done to date? And it's amazing when you look at it. So I just want to bring a couple of reminders. As you know, our budget's coming up, and we'll be presenting that week after next. I know that Kurt and Avis will be sending out information, if it's not already been sent out, about how you can listen in. I would truly encourage you to listen in. I'm not at liberty to talk about what's going to be in that budget because we're still working with finance and administration on that. But please listen in. But to give you an idea of what's happened since Governor Lee was elected, here's what's happened. Our state funding has increased by almost $38 million in 2 years. State funding, $38 million. I'll go over those programs in a moment that have gone live. And then the federal grants, and y'all, these grants are our team going after dollars that we give to you. Debbie Hillen spoke a little bit about the rural recovery behavioral health project that she and Helen Ross McNabb will be leading. That wouldn't have happened if our team didn't say, we're going to write this grant and get the dollars to the community. You'll be hearing from Jess and Darren later about that project. But just to give you an idea, since Governor Lee's been in office, our team has written $128 million worth of new federal grants. $128 million worth of new federal grants. So I'm going to go over some of these projects just to remind us of how we've been able to respond proactively to the unintended consequences of COVID-19 because of these efforts. As you know, in FY20, when Governor Lee was first elected, we asked to increase the federal poverty level of Tennesseans that were able to access services who were uninsured through the behavioral health safety net. That $5 million increase allowed us to serve 40,000 Tennesseans connected to the prior dollars that we had allocated. That represented a 13% increase in that first year. You'll note that recovery court expansions have occurred and that we have actually expanded those 27 recovery courts in that first year. We were able to add criminal justice liaisons to go now to 76 counties. We have the 10 Rocks project that's allowed us to serve almost 400 new individuals in courts across the state. We've been able to expand the suicide prevention network and have allowed the ability to have staff be hired through TSPN for every region in the state to help prevent suicides. We've expanded the youth and young adult mental health awareness and promotion program, and that allowed us to reach almost 11,000 individuals. Those were a few of the programs that we increased with state funding in FY20. In FY21, excited about the expansion of the behavioral health safety net for children. Ricky, I know you asked for an update on that, so I appreciate your asking about that. We're hoping to serve up to 5,000 individuals with that funding. Matt and I spoke yesterday. That program will be moved forward and hopefully get approved to be able to make it uninsured, just uninsured, rather than just an FPL level of 138. That's something that we're working on right now. The expansion of the school-based behavioral health liaisons, that's allowed us to go from 36 counties to all 95 counties. Naltrexone in recovery courts, allowing us to save lives through that process, as well as the East Tennessee inpatient programs that continue today to serve Tennesseans in East Tennessee. If you look at the new federal grants, this is amazing. Again, $128 million since January of 2019. We've got the expansion of the system of care, fully funded for that expansion. Project Rural Recovery that we've just spoken about. Another expansion of comprehensive opioid reduction strategies, comprehensive opioid stimulant and substance abuse site-based programs. Our team has gone after every disaster recovery initiative funding source that there was. And if you look at the combined funding that's going to each of you as providers that qualify, this really helps offset any losses you might have had due to COVID-19 by having to purchase PPE or having to cover staff potentially through having to hire someone if someone was off or overlap someone. I mean, our team has done so well. I can't say enough about what they've done and how they've worked with each of you. The COVID-19 behavioral health program that was awarded, as well as the Tennessee Recovery Navigators. We've been awarded funding to increase those. Suicide prevention training for schools. Again, those are just some of the $128 million worth of funding that our team has gotten and goes out to you. As you all know, we have a very low overhead of 6%, and that's something that we're proud of because we want the dollars to go to the community. The second question that I got, Ricky, is from you. You asked about the department's decision on telehealth services and how long it will remain in place for our funded programs. We're going to remain in place as long as we're able. I mean, we believe in telehealth. We believe that it's helped reach individuals that wouldn't have been able to be reached. So we're hoping that all of the work that our team did related to the legislation that was passed continues to help us. So we want it to remain in place as long as legislation allows that. The update on the state budget as it relates to the budget funding projections of mental health services, Robin, you asked that question. That's part of why I went over the budget of where we're at. I will tell you, Robin, that for this year's budget, we were asked to please look at things that have to happen. There's still a lot of concern, and it's very warranted concern about what will occur when the stimulus funds that are right now in our economy no longer are there, and how that will impact the state budget. So we are working with FNA on that directive, totally support the governor and FNA because we know we don't want to start something that we have to end because the economy impacts what we're going to move forward. But I will tell you that all the work that's gone into the first 2 years, I'd put this up against any other state in the union, any other mental health program. I'm actually going to reach out to my commissioner colleagues. I don't know of any other state that's been as successful in getting federal grants and state dollars as we have in the last 2 years. But I'm going to check that out, and I'll report on that during the next Planning and Policy Council meeting. I miss seeing y'all in person. I hate that I'm not able to see you guys, and I know our team does too, but please know how much we appreciate you. And if you ever have a need of anything, we're here. We try to be extremely responsive to the providers and consumers and families. So with that, I will stop. And Kim, I'm available for questions, comments, anything anyone wants to bring up.
Thank you, Commissioner. I did notice there was questions about getting that information, but I saw where it was responded that these will be found in the minutes when the rundown of the grants, the federal grants and the dollars that you guys in your department was able to obtain. And so, Kirby, are there any other questions that you know of?
I haven't received any, but if you have any, if you think of any later, feel free to either put them in the chat box or you can send me a direct email and I can get that to Commissioner Williams.
That will work. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Commissioner. Appreciate, as always, the information and your time to share that with us.
Thank you.
All right. At this point, we will move into our next report, or not report, but a presentation. And again, as a reminder, keep your phones on mute. And Kirby is sharing the information, but this is mental health services providing support to deaf and hard of hearing students. And this is being conducted by Jack Johnson, the director of the Comprehensive Educational Resource Center. And I believe we will also have at the top of our screen for viewing the interpreter for this presentation. So thank you very much.
Hi, Angela. Hey, Angela. Okay. Just a reminder to everyone before we get started, I had mentioned this in the beginning, but in case you weren't here on the call, for this presentation, we will be using American Sign Language. Jack will be using American Sign Language with his interpreter, Angela. So if you don't mind, if you go to the top of your screen under View, if you scroll down to Hide Non-Video Participants, you'll be able to follow along with the interpreter and Jack's presentation. So I encourage you to do so. And welcome, Jack and Angela.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to start the presentation with just, I want to thank you all for the honor and privilege to meet and share with you with a topic that is increasingly becoming a hot topic in the deaf community. I'm hopeful that the information I share today will have a positive impact in our society for generations to come. Now, before I begin, I want to give you just a snippet of who I am and what I do. I am an individual who is hard of hearing and culturally deaf. Growing up, I struggled with my place in the world because I didn't quite fit nicely in the hearing world. And that had an impact on my own mental health throughout, especially my teenage years. Counseling support through high school and college did put me on the path of being a contributing member of our community and the lives of young deaf and hard of hearing children. Over the past 24 years, I have worn many different hats in education, including being a school principal at the TDMHSAS School for the Deaf. Today, I'm continuing my services in deaf education as the Director of Comprehensive Educational Resource Center at the Tennessee Schools for the Deaf. Now, for the remainder of this presentation, I'm going to switch to American Sign Language. Okay? Next slide.
Today, I will be taking about 15 minutes to provide you an overview of a topic that could easily take 2 hours. It is my hope that you will gain a better understanding of how the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse can support a low incidence disability group of students who are deaf and hard of hearing. The most important information that I want you to get from my presentation is the role of language deprivation on the mental health of students who are deaf and hard of hearing. Next slide. Based on a census review through Gallaudet University, there are approximately 20,000 functionally deaf or hard of hearing adults in Tennessee. This group represents less than 1% of the population in Tennessee, which is why deafness is considered a low incidence disability. Next slide. Even though deaf people make up a very small percentage of our great state, we are finding that Tennessee did not do a good job preparing our deaf and hard of hearing students to be lifelong contributors through the first 18 years of their life. Compared to other states and regions throughout the United States, Tennessee is ranked near the bottom for post-secondary achievement gaps of deaf adults compared to their hearing counterparts. The Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse can help the Department of Education close that achievement gap for future generations of deaf and hard of hearing Tennesseans. Next slide. Approximately 95% of deaf and hard of hearing individuals are born into families with no understanding of deafness. Most of these parents are at a loss on how to raise a child without a hearing loss. Their baby is literally the first deaf person they have met. Next slide. A federally funded program called the Early Hearing Detection and Intervention was established in the early 2000s to identify babies with hearing loss and direct them to early intervention services. In Tennessee, it is estimated that 243 babies are born every year with hearing concerns. On a side note, approximately 5% of these babies are profoundly deaf with no amplification benefits. Next slide. The journey of mental health crisis among deaf and hard of hearing Tennesseans begins with the shattered hopes and dreams that their parents have. Many of the parents do what they can to fix their broken babies, and they end up doing the one thing that their babies desperately need for mental health stability, building a foundational language. Next slide. Prelingually deaf children means that they have experienced a hearing loss before they have the opportunity to develop language using their hearing, typically between the ages of birth to 18 months old. These young ones spend the first few years of their lives learning how to hear instead of naturally building their first language. Next slide. Many professionals lead parents to believe that hearing aids or cochlear implants will fix their babies and restore normal hearing. While there are some that have near perfect hearing using amplification, most continue to experience significant gaps in their hearing ability, and that impacts their ability to build a foundational language using hearing alone. Next slide. The single most important issue impacting mental health for deaf and hard of hearing individuals is language deprivation. Language deprivation is associated with the lack of linguistic stimuli that is necessary for language acquisition processes in an individual. Deaf people as a group are the only ones in the world that struggle with language deprivation. No other groups of people experience the predictive and pervasive gaps of foundational language that impacts all areas of their lives. Next slide. This is a short video developed by the Niall DeMarco Foundation illustrating language deprivation. In the interest of time, I will not be showing this 2-minute video, but I have included the QR code and the website for you to watch on your own. All right, next slide. There are deeply rooted systemic reasons that contribute to language deprivation among deaf and hard of hearing children, which would take too much time to unpack. The bottom line is, since most parents want their deaf babies to be as normal as possible, they unknowingly set their babies up to be language deprived because of the systemic approach of proving failure before attempting alternative approaches. Many of our deaf children must experience failure using amplification devices, and the listening and spoken skill strategies before being allowed to try American Sign Language. Next slide. It may take years of failure before deaf students are permitted to learn sign language or to be referred to the schools for the deaf. Often they arrive at TSD, the Tennessee Schools for the Deaf, without complete language, and they are essentially starting from scratch while navigating the academic requirements such as English, math, science, and social studies, and all those other classes. And next slide. The fictional character, Tarzan, I'm sure you're familiar with him. This is a good example of someone exhibiting signs of language deprivation. That is a syndrome, language deprivation syndrome, LDS. A person with LDS would struggle with concepts of time, cause and effect, abstract concepts, and typically just have difficulty learning. Their fund of information is reduced. A person with LDS struggles with relationships because of their inability to empathize, regulate their emotions, which would impact their overall mental health. I have mentioned that deaf people as a group are the only ones in the world that struggle with language deprivation. Next slide. It is easy to assume that language deprivation is a natural byproduct of deafness. But deaf children born into deaf families have full access to language from birth. They do not exhibit signs of language deprivation. Those children's overall development is comparable to that of normally developing hearing children. Language deprivation occurs only when the deaf child does not have access to develop their first language. Next slide. Most deaf or hard of hearing children are the only ones in their families with deafness. Throughout their lives, they struggle with isolation within their own families. The next picture that I will show you illustrates a typical life of a deaf person. Next slide. This is a well-known painting in the deaf community. Many deaf people relate to this. Most deaf people are members of families who cannot communicate with them. And during family gatherings such as Thanksgiving, for example, Christmas, many deaf feel like they are the family pet. They are told hello, they get patted on the head by their own family members. Can you imagine this kind of impact that this has on a deaf child's mental health? Next slide. Even as far back as 1848, it was recognized the impact of not having a language on deaf people. Sadly, not much has changed in the last 160 years. Next slide. Before coming to Tennessee, I had the privilege of working at the South Carolina School for the Deaf and the Blind. The School for the Deaf had a great relationship with the South Carolina's Department of Mental Health, and we worked closely to provide specialized services to deaf children in significant distress. The mental health counselors provided direct services to the deaf in the deaf child's best interest. in the deaf child's best language, American Sign Language. It was one of the best collaborations that I have seen that truly benefited these students. Next slide. Approximately 29% of our student population on our Knoxville campus could benefit from the support of mental health professionals who can communicate in their language of choice and who understand the issues of language deprivation. Next slide. While we have 3 school counselors on our campus, those 3 are not prepared or equipped to work with students experiencing traumatic issues such as sexual molestation, abuse, physical neglect, emotional neglect, and other significant issues. Next slide. About 1 year ago, I met with Deputy Commissioner Matt Yancey, as well as other senior members of the department, to begin the work of providing mental health services to a group of children who are often left unheard. My hope is that my short presentation today opens a dialogue for collaborative efforts between our agencies, a collaboration to address the continuing and growing mental health needs of deaf and hard of hearing children, especially in today's COVID pandemic. Next slide. The Tennessee Schools for the Deaf only serves a small percentage of deaf students throughout Tennessee. My desire is for both of our agencies to be a statewide resource for all deaf students, deaf and hard of hearing students throughout the state of Tennessee. Next slide. As I wrap up my short presentation, I want to leave you with this question. What are we going to do now to help approximately 600 students in Tennessee with with some level of language deprivation to help them receive equal access to mental health services? Thank you so much.
Kim?
Yes.
Hey, I'd like to respond to that. That was a really great presentation. This is Marie Williams. I would say the first step in being able to respond to that is having dollars to serve students. And that's exactly what the behavioral health safety net is for. It's for uninsured students who have mental health needs. The second piece is making sure that our providers that we contract with are able to offer services that are supportive of deaf and hard of hearing students. And that is something that we do require in our contract. So that's something that we've made sure that we've addressed. I'd be really interested in your work with the other states, South Carolina, about what they did that was so supportive. I'd really like to hear about that. And then thirdly, I'd like to say that KinCare, which is a huge part of our system, really needs to be at the table as well, as they fund the bulk of services that are mental health for students. So again, great presentation, and would love if you could let us know what happened in South Carolina so that we can think of some more creative ideas.
Thank you for that. And if you don't mind, I can give you a little history about South Carolina. About 25 years ago, families of a deaf man sued the Department of Health in South Carolina because they did not provide equal access for mental health services. They were not equal. So that department was sued. And so South Carolina established an umbrella with a separate deaf and hard of hearing focus. And that served not just children, but all deaf individuals, adults as well. And that approach was a collaboration with my School for the Deaf.
Angela, thank you.
That just gives you a little bit of information there.
Yeah,
Okay.
Thanks so much. So it appears that was really part of a lawsuit they developed separate. What we're wanting to do is to be able to collaborate and make sure that our service system is able to grant equal access to deaf and hard of hearing individuals. Again, that's why we've increased the safety net for kids, because we know that group would fall underneath that. So Angela, could you say what they actually did? I mean, was there, in addition to being collaborative, were there any programs that were put in place for students and adults that came out of the establishment of that separate office?
This is Jack speaking. All that, I focused mostly on the school part because I was a principal at the time of that school. When we had a difficulty with a student, maybe a family was in crisis, or the student was considering self-harm, we would call the mental health agency, and they have counselors there who were fluent in American Sign Language.
Okay.
They did not use interpreters. They used direct services. They directly signed, the therapist could sign with the student. They had a foundational understanding of language deprivation and mental health issues.
All right, what I'll do, we have a weekly call with the commissioners of the Southeast region. South Carolina is on that call. We do that every Friday morning at 7 a.m. When we have that call this week, I'll talk to the South Carolina commissioner. I'd like to know what they did to create that environment. And again, appreciate your presentation. It really, really was good. And want you to know that our department is committed as well to make sure that we offer access to anyone that's struggling with a disability that needs mental health treatment and substance use treatment. So thank you so much. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you for inviting me. This was great.
All right, thank you.
All right, goodbye.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you, Jack and Angela. We definitely appreciate that presentation. And just want to say you were reaching out to bring this group together for a collaborative effort. And you've picked the right group because, as I said earlier in our thing, we definitely have a very proactive group. And I would just encourage every regional committee or regional council to reach out to representatives in your region for the deaf and hard of hearing. Those who have some of the schools placed there, definitely reach out and have them be a part of our ongoing needs assessment and the work that we do with our council. Again, definitely appreciated your presentation.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right. Next, we have a presentation from Ellen on the needs assessment and the data report. So I will turn it over to Ellen.
Kim,
Yes, ma'am.
can I ask one question? I'm sorry. If we still have Angela and Jack on the call, the WebEx that we're doing, are they still on here?
Yes, they are. They're both here.
Awesome. Okay. My question would be, do they have any positive stories? I know that we've served deaf and hard of hearing in our regional mental health institutes and have been very successful in making sure that they had someone, if not directly doing sign language, that was on staff, someone that was interpreting. I mean, we do the best we can with what staff we've got, but have they heard any positive stories about what we've been doing?
Yes, especially for students who struggle with language.
Mm-hmm.
Really, whether it's spoken English or it's using American Sign Language, it may appear as though the student is proficient in communicating through sign language, but really when you look at the language and the structure of it, you find that the foundation is weak.
Mm-hmm.
So that in that instance, facilitating communication through an interpreter is not always the best avenue, because the interpreter may not have what is needed to meet where the student's communication breakdown is.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we do use, in a sense, a deaf person who maybe they are proficient American Sign Language, they have grown up using American Sign Language.
Mm-hmm.
However, they do have the ability to adjust language to meet the student where their needs are. Suppose the student isn't proficient in communicating in American Sign Language, they would be able to reduce the vocabulary and reduce the content in a form that the student would understand. And that's why I say again, using an interpreter is not always the best access of communication.
Got it. Jack, thank you for your feedback on that question. One thing that I've also wondered, you know, we have all had to go to telehealth and media modes to be able to do treatment services as effectively as possible during the age of COVID. There may be some innovative things we could do where maybe we don't have the person on staff if we don't have them on staff, but we could have some sort of setup where we could telehealth, you know, bring that person in through a laptop or use a phone or something where, I mean, I just want you to know we will think creatively, and we do think creatively. And I promise I will follow up with South Carolina's commissioner on this. But any thoughts you have on using telehealth, any vendors or people in this state that are using that service that you would recommend to us?
Actually, this past weekend, we faced a situation similar with a student of ours.
Mm-hmm.
The student was having some issues, and I'm not going to get into the details of the context of the situation, but there was a need for a mental health intervention. And so the student, being profoundly deaf and needing access to communication, there was no, the option was not presented to have an interpreter. And so there was some type of interpreter that was able to be provided through a video service, but unfortunately, this particular person had a very bad experience in the past. And so trying to work through the situation that way was not an option. This particular person is a person of a deaf family, and so language was not an issue. Language and communication was accessible in their environment. And so we really tried to advocate that that child would be able to have what was needed. And so an interpreter was brought in as a face-to-face service. And really the theory was using a video screen would suffice. And it sounds good. You could see the interpreter, but unfortunately with technology, there can be some struggles. And it was a difficult situation for that particular person. Again, just saying, when you don't have a choice, you do the best you can. But sometimes having an interpreter on a screen is not the best option, and it could actually cause more harm than good.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. That is something that when you're dealing with a person with potential paranoid issues or visual hallucinations, that may really exacerbate the issue. But when we're trying to be collaborative and make sure that we've got what, that we can utilize what we've got, this is something that I think we'll look a little bit more into, Jack. I really do appreciate your feedback. My final thoughts, have y'all met with TennCare? Have you met with the Department of Education? And have you done a presentation with the Tennessee Association of Mental Health Organizations and the Tennessee Association of Alcohol and Drug Services? Both of those organizations really are umbrella for our provider network. And I'm wondering if you guys have had any interaction with any of those entities.
I haven't quite yet, but right now within the deaf community, I am trying to work on mental health services for deaf adults. Of course, that's who would impact in the deaf community. I do see there is a struggle in that area, but my concern also is for our deaf and hard of hearing children. And that's where my primary focus work is at this time. I would like to see how we could bring all of those pieces together to support all deaf communities.
Absolutely. Jack, we, Matt Yancey is our Deputy Commissioner of Community Behavioral Health Services, and Ty Thornton is our Chief of Hospital Operations. We have great relationships with Department of Education, TennCare, with TADIS, TAMHO, Tennessee Mental Health Consumers Association. We're getting ready to launch a certified youth peer specialist program. There are only 4, to my knowledge, other states that are doing that. So obviously we're trying to be as cutting edge as we can in this state. I'd like to ask Matt to try to convene the appropriate people from Department of Education and TennCare with him and Ty, and set up a meeting with you to sort of talk about what we already have existing. That I think that's important to know. And I also see Mary Linden saying that TADIS would be very interested. Mary Linden, what I was thinking is if we could meet as the 3 departments that actually touch this issue and then do follow-up meetings, so maybe that we could come up with something and then do the follow-up meetings with Jack and his group. It would be awesome. And of course, I will ask the South Carolina Commissioner what they did, how they did it. But Matt, would you be willing to move forward and set up a meeting with those entities and just sort of talk through what are we doing today, what's included in our contracts today, where we're at today, and then see how if there are things that we could do better or really things that we're doing great that people need to know about.
Hey, Commissioner, and Jack, it's good to see you again. Everything prior to the pandemic seems like forever ago, but really good to reconnect. And Commissioner, yeah, I think we should do that. TennCare and the Department of Education are really intrinsic to this conversation. So we'll be glad to help advance conversations and certainly aware of the need to have more people who are trained in American Sign Language to become behavioral health professionals. I think that's the ideal situation. So looking forward to talking more and reconnecting and engaging our sister agencies on this really important topic. So Jack, again, good to see you, okay?
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you all. I've got to get off. I was supposed to be on 11:30 call, so I'm going to get off. Kim, thank you again for having me here, and it's always good to see people. That Jack, it was great to see you. Y'all have a blessed rest of your day.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate that. Okay, let's move on to Ellen, the needs assessment and the data report that you have for us.
Hello, everyone. So we are going to be talking about the needs that the planning councils identified. Kurt, if you can go to the next slide, please. And there were 4 mental health needs and 3 substance abuse needs that were identified by multiple regional counseling, multiple regional planning councils, and we will be talking about each one of these specifically. The next slide gives an overview of how we do the needs assessment process. Can you show the next slide, please? So this is a important process that the planning councils participate in their regions and go through great lengths every year to identify what needs are most pertinent for their communities. And as part of this process, each one of the councils identifies 2 substance abuse needs and 2 mental health needs. And we really appreciate all the work that you put into identifying those needs. Next slide, please. This just outlines the timeline. So what this report is a response to are the needs that you identified in 2020 and how the department has been working on those identified needs. Next slide, please. These are all the different people that contributed to helping put together information about the needs that the planning councils identified. We greatly appreciate everyone's contributions to this. Next slide, please. First, we're going to talk about the mental health needs. These are the 4 mental health needs that were identified this year as being the most frequently reported mental health needs, and we will go through each one of these. Next slide, please. The first need we're going to talk about is enhance the children and youth crisis continuum. This map shows where the crisis providers are located that work with children. There are 12 areas where crisis providers are located. Next slide, please. In addition to crisis services to support the crisis continuum, we also have the System of Care Across Tennessee program that works with families and children and young adults that are suffering or experiencing mental health and emotional behavioral health needs. This is a intensive wraparound program that has served 333 clients so far, and we're excited to say that we recently got additional funding to continue and expand upon these efforts. In addition to SOCAT, there is also a program for respite services for children and youth that provides planned respite services as well as respite vouchers for services. Carrie Virgo is the director of the Children's Youth and Family Program. Does anyone have any questions for her or for Jennifer Armstrong, who is the director of Crisis Services?
Hey, Ellen. Ellen?
Yes.
Hey, this is Matt Yancey. I just wanted to add real quickly on this piece. I think every time we go down the road of doing a needs assessment, it's also important to assess for the things that are working within the state. And I think these are two programs that the department felt were relevant to preventing and mitigating crisis, specifically among children living with serious emotional disturbance. I don't want to speak on behalf of Carrie, but I would draw attention to the data related to system of care across Tennessee. We've got providers across the state who have partnered with the department for, many, many years on system of care. But I think the data speaks to itself. These are children that generally would engage in a crisis service, whether it be a CSU level of care, whether it be going to the emergency department, hospitalization. And as you can see, by providing in-home intensive, customized wraparound services, many of these kids, if not the vast majority, we're not seeing emergency room visits, we're not seeing hospitalizations, we're not seeing these children being brought into state custody. And as you can see, other payers are continuing to invest in that work. It's done a great job in preventing and mitigating crises. I know through the SOCAT and the wraparound model, there are crisis plans in place with each family, and they're working. I think too, to add a little more flavor to the respite work that we have done for many years, as it relates to planned respite. This is really working with those families, providing a respite consultant who can provide short-term respite, but also work with that family in developing their own natural supports. Also with the respite voucher program, providing those respite vouchers for families whose children may have a serious emotional disturbance. The parents can choose their own respite provider. Respite is also, I think, in my opinion, a key service in addressing and mitigating crisis among kids and families. Carrie, if you're on the call, I'm not sure, is there anything you'd like to add to that as it relates to these programs enhancing the crisis work that we do around children?
Thanks, Matt. Yes, actually, it's been incredibly exciting with the system of care across Tennessee that we have been working with all of the crisis providers, putting in place MOUs to make sure that as some of those kids are brought to the attention of the system, that we are aware of who is not eligible for hospitalization. And those are typically the children and youth that we want to see in the system of care, because those are the ones that are getting the most benefit from these in-home services. I think it's been a great partnership, and we are incredibly excited to get to continue that partnership for, at a minimum, the next 4 years.
Thank you so much. Next slide, please. So we also have been doing a lot of new exciting things in the area of providing school-based services. And one of the needs that was identified this year was increasing school-based mental health services and screenings. So as was discussed previously by the commissioner today, the school-based liaison program is expanding from 36 counties to all 95 counties. Next slide, please. This gives you an idea of the tiers of services that the school-based liaison program is intending to provide. That includes, as you see at the top of the pyramid, more intensive services that students may be in need of. Carrie, is there anything you would like to add to this slide?
No, thank you, Ellen. I think it's a very word dense slide, so I'm going to recommend that most people who are interested take a look at that offline when you get that presentation. But we are incredibly excited about how we've been able to move forward, and the providers are doing a really good job of recruiting new staff, and we are looking forward to getting into the schools as soon as we can. We have been having to get a little more creative with COVID being in place, but we seem to be still able to help out the schools who are interested, and we are continuing to increase the amount of virtual type of meetings and things like that, and moving that work forward. Thank you.
Next slide, please. These are some additional programs and new funding that was acquired in FY 2020 and FY 21 to help with school-based mental health services. We talked about the school-based liaison program and the expansion of behavioral health safety net for children, as well as efforts to increase mental health awareness and promotion among young adults. Next slide, please. One of the other needs that was identified by the planning councils was to look at workforce development activities. This gives a list of different activities that are going on in this area and programs that are available for student loan repayment. And I would also like to highlight that there's information here about the Certified Peer Recovery Specialist program. Peer recovery specialists work with people that are experiencing mental health illness and have their personal experiences to share to help make that path to recovery one that is realized. Would Matt, do you care to add on to this?
I would just add, I think we as a department, we as a state feel like certified peer recovery specialists play a really, really important role in the behavioral health workforce. And, we're committed to doing everything we can to train and certify more people, more individuals to become CPRSs, because they truly, they not only supplement the workforce, they enhance it. And I think that's one way that we are looking to address workforce shortages by augmenting the workforce with more people with lived experience. Thanks, Al.
And a shout out to Lisa Reagan, who has a great impact on this program and is very dedicated to it and works very hard on it every year. Next slide, please. One of the other and the fourth of the four mental health needs that were identified was increasing housing for individuals with mental health for co-occurring diseases. This is an exciting new program where we were able to expand the Creative Home Initiatives program to what is referred to as CHI 2.0, that extends the CHI program to people that are experiencing substance use disorders and helping getting housing for that group of clients as well. Any questions on this slide? Next slide, please. This gives you a look at where the housing coordinators for CHI 1 and CHI 2.2 are with their contact information. So this will be available to you as the presentation goes out. Next slide, please. Other programs that target housing for individuals living with mental health and co-occurring disorders include the Targeted Transitional Support Program, as well as the Intensive Long-Term Support Program. We continue to fund these efforts and continue to see them as an important impact to help people transition into recovery. Any questions on this slide? Next slide,
Ellen,
please.
I was trying to ask a question. I saw that there's 300 new housing units added in 2020. Where are those programs?
Hi, Mary. This is Neru Goldman, Office of Housing and Home Services. Thank you for asking that question. It actually gives us an opportunity to share with everyone that the Creating Homes Initiative, it focuses on building, creating housing options, and housing options include housing units as well as opportunities to get folks into those units, either by form of housing vouchers or other types of significant resources that help create affordable opportunities. So with that, to that point, the entire set of the increase that we've experienced in 2020 is a result of our regional CHI 1 and CHI 2.0 regional housing facilitators in their efforts to be able to acquire these among various funding sources and stakeholders that can contribute in this very tangible way. These 300 is really scattered through across all of the 7 regions. We can provide a snapshot by region to kind of give you an idea of where housing options are being provided. And if there's anything that's specific to a particular area, you can reach out to us at our office and we will work to give you the information that you need.
Okay, well, can I just make a suggestion then that the regional information go to each one of the 7 regional planning councils so they can have that information?
We'd be happy to prepare that. Thank you, Ellen.
Next slide, please. Another important way to identify housing opportunities is the website for the Housing Within Reach has been updated. There are a number of features of this program that allow people to identify resources within their communities for different housing opportunities. Next slide, please. The Outreach Access and Recovery Program, or known as SOAR, is another program that is designed to increase access to Social Security disability benefits to help people with mental health and substance use disorders to acquire and maintain housing. The SOAR Liaison Program is a partner program with this, and as you can see, these 2 programs are having high success rates with helping people obtain and sustain housing above the national average of 65%. Any questions about this program? Next slide, please. We're now going to talk about the substance abuse service needs that have been identified. There were 3 in particular that were identified by more than one region, and we're going to discuss each one of these. Next slide, please. The first need that we're going to talk about is increasing recovery and transitional housing for individuals with substance use disorder and or co-occurring diagnoses. Oxford Houses are an important umbrella organization that provide housing for people in recovery, as well as the transitional housing program. We also talked about the Creating Homes Initiative 2.0 program that is also helping with housing for individuals with mental health and co-occurring substance use disorders. Next slide, please. We continue to see an increase in the number of beds available in Oxford Houses. We are now at 771 beds. Next slide, please. This gives you an idea of where the transitional housing is located. There are now 110 houses, Oxford Houses, and providing 771 beds. Next slide, please. This is a list of the programs that offer recovery and transitional housing. Next slide, please. Another need that the Planning Council's identified, a need to increase access to residential and detox beds for people with substance use disorder. As you can see, the number of crisis detox beds has increased to 2,510, and the number of level 4 detox beds has increased to 240. Next slide, please. The third need that was identified was to increase programs for at-risk youth. As we have discussed, in the event of COVID, this is certainly on everyone's minds for school-aged youth, but for all children. So some of the treatment options that are available for at-risk youth that we have listed here are residential services and outpatient services. Any questions on that? Next slide, please. There are also now 46 prevention coalitions throughout the state. This gives you an idea of the types of activities that the prevention coalitions are focusing on. 25 of the coalitions have a youth coalition. Any questions on this? Next slide, please. Another big accomplishment for the Division of Substance Abuse Services was the completion of the Tennessee Together survey. More than 21,000 8th, 10th, and 12th graders participated in this survey, giving us more information about substance use patterns than we have ever had before. And this information allowed weighting by regions so we can get a more closer look of what's going on in parts of the state and how things may vary in parts of the state. Some of the information you may have seen through the Department of Education's Youth Behavioral Factor Survey. That is a state level survey. What is really nice about the survey and the result of all the hard work that went into it is it does allow us to say something at the regional level as well as the state level. Next slide, please. These are some of the things that the Tennessee Together survey included. There's a detailed report on our website about this. Next slide, please. This is a quick highlight that gives you an idea from the TN Together survey about youth perceptions of prescription drug use. Any questions about this TN Together survey? Next slide, please. We also want to give you a quick update on the Tennessee Recovery Navigators program. That program expanded to 9 additional hospitals this past year, serving 88 counties, or serving people in 88 counties. Over 2,000 people were identified in this program, and among them, over 1,500 were placed into treatment and recovery services from more than 50 hospitals. Next slide, please. As you can see, this is a substantial increase from fiscal year 2019 in spite of COVID, for both individuals served by the Recovery Navigator program and individuals placed into treatment. Any questions about this program? Next slide, please. We'd also like to provide a quick update on the recovery congregation work. There are now 736 certified recovery congregations, and this program continues to grow. There's information on our website about the faith-based initiatives, as well as more detailed information about where the recovery congregations are located. Thank you so much for your time. Please feel free to ask any questions about anything that we covered today.
Thank you, Ellen. We appreciate that presentation. It goes along well with, I like how you put with the needs assessments that are being done across the state, and kind of showing the work that's being done to kind of meet those needs that are being brought to the forefront. And so good information. If there are any, just as a reminder, these slides were sent out through email prior to the meeting. And then afterwards, the minutes will be provided. So if there were questions that were asked, and the answers to those will be within those minutes for those presentations. So at this point, let's move right in to our last presentation. And last but not least, of course, we'll have Project Rural Recovery by Jessica Ivey.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. And can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So good morning, everybody. I know we're short on time, so I'm going to do my best to kind of fly through these slides. I want to thank you for taking the time and giving us the time to present on Project Rural Recovery. My name is Jessica Ivy, and I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives with the department. Darren Lehman has been hired as the Director of Project Rural Recovery and will be leading this effort moving forward. So Project Rural Recovery is really looking to provide integrated behavioral, substance abuse, and primary health care services and community linkages utilizing 2 mobile buses. So we will be moving these clinics on wheels out to the communities. We saw this as an opportunity to really answer Governor Lee's Executive Order number 1 to serve rural communities well. We were able to secure this funding through SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, through a grant called Promoting Integration of Primary and Behavioral Health Care, which aims to promote the full integration and collaboration in clinical practice between primary and behavioral health care. And we are looking to start services in November, which is in just a few days. I think our goal is to start actual service delivery November 16th. So our goals for the program is integration, assess and diagnose, engagement and treatment, and outreach. So a couple highlights of those, we're really looking to integrate behavioral and primary health care, and we're really looking to build a template that can be reproduced across the state of Tennessee, because as we do well, we like to make sure that we are serving all counties. So that is always our goal and intention. We are looking to evaluate at least 10 patients per day per bus. And we're looking to treat the rural populations who are currently underserved, as we all know. And we are also hoping to outreach to 500 stakeholders in these counties in the first year. Our partner providers, which has already been mentioned, is Buffalo Valley and Helen Ross McNabb. On this slide, you will see the 10 counties we will be serving. So Buffalo Valley will be serving Perry, Lewis, Wayne, Lawrence, and Marshall, and Helen Ross McNabb will be serving Claiborne, Hancock, Granger, Jefferson, and Cock. The way we chose these counties were based off need. So 4 of these counties are rurally distressed counties, and those are Perry, Wayne, Cock, and Hancock. And then we looked at the contiguous counties around those. These are some of the services that we are hoping to provide on the bus. This is not an exhaustive list. And as we start, we will be sure to expand based off capacity and need. One of the things I will mention is we have been building relationships in each of the communities to ensure that we are connecting the patients we see on the buses to other services that are in those communities for continuity of care purposes, but also for if we have a patient that comes on the bus that, you know, their needs are far greater than what we can serve, we want to make sure that we have a warm handoff ability to the service that they need in that community. There will be multidisciplinary teams on each of these buses, which consists of an integrated program director, nurse practitioners, a behavioral health clinician, and an integrated care community specialist, which we're hoping is also a CPRS, and then a mobile office manager / bus driver. So the bus driver has been kind of the end of many jokes in this process, but we're really excited to be able to do this and have someone that will be willing to drive these buses. The mobile units will function as a normal clinic, so they will have 2 exam rooms, they have a bathroom and waiting areas. We're looking at opportunities for telehealth. In regards to appointments and how people will kind of engage in services, we are looking at walk-up services and are exploring what scheduled appointments will look like for each of these. We're also looking at offering flu vaccines. Being the season, we want to make sure that that's an option. And we will, at this time, assess the need to offer COVID testing. At this time, that's not something we're looking to do unless it becomes a significant need. These are our mobile units. They are large and we'll be taking charge, and we are so excited to get them on the road and providing services. Some of the community partners we have connected with already are the community health departments, DHS. We've talked with a few primary care associations and things of that sort, and we're still outreaching to the different faith-based partners, other community-based providers, the hospitals, the county hospitals, and county officials. Progress to date, we have the vans purchased and in the shape that we need them. Helen Ross McNabb received their bus about a week and a half ago. Buffalo Valley will be receiving their bus this Friday. Very exciting. And we've had a lot of opportunity to connect with the different community providers in each county. That is our very brief, quick, summarized presentation for you guys. We are available for questions. I know that we're about 4 minutes over right now. I'll go back to the slide with our emails. Please reach out if you have questions. We do have a webpage on our department website. And once the schedules for the buses, like what the schedule will be for each county, once those are set, that will be on that webpage, and we will be sure to send out any information as it comes along. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessica. That was great. And looking forward to see as this new program, and very innovative, I might add, as it gets launched, and looking at the positive outcomes that are to come. So very excited about that, and hopefully that will go over really well, and as the need arises, move on to the rest of the state. So thank you for sharing that. And again, these slides will be shared, so you have the contact information, or actually have been sent out, and you all have that. At this point, I want to take time. We have covered all of our presentations. I want to take a little bit of time and say thank you to everybody for joining our meeting today and staying on the call. We had some really good information shared during this council meeting. And as always, thank you so much to Avis, Amy, and Kirby and Kurt. Always have everything so organized and together for this meeting. And as we move forward, we have our next meeting will be on February the 9th, and that location will be determined at a later date with kind of looking at the future of COVID. But before we open up for adjourning, I believe Avis has some announcements to make. And if Kurt, Amy, or Kirby, if either of you have announcements, please go ahead and do that.
All of our council members and guests that have joined us today, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to kind of switch gears, be available today versus December 15th. So we appreciate you for that, and a great turnout. Just two announcements I want to make. One, many of you may have seen this in the chat box, that Jack Stewart, who is one of our faithful members, is currently in the hospital in the intensive care unit with COVID-19. Please keep him and his family in your thoughts and prayers as we wish him a speedy recovery and return home. Also, as the commissioner has announced, we'll be sending it out to you, so stay tuned for that. And I hope everyone has a great day and enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you, Avis.
Thank you, Avis. This is Kurt. I just want to echo what she said. Thanks for y'all's flexibility to join us a lot earlier in the year than we usually do. But we wanted to take advantage of the executive order while we knew it was set. We might get an extension, we don't know, but we are glad that everyone could come together today. It was a very enlightening meeting, as it always is. And if we don't see you or talk to you in another capacity before the holidays, happy holidays, and hope everyone stays safe. And of course, our thoughts and prayers go to Jack's family. Thanks.
Thank you, Kurt. Kirby, Amy, do y'all have anything?
Kim. Nothing on my end, just echoing what everyone else said. Thank you so much. This was a great turnout with wonderful presentations. Thanks for staying a little bit over time. Just a reminder, if you've called in, to send me an email letting me know that you were on the call. And also, if you're a department staff member, if you've joined and only your CI number is appearing, can you please send me an email just so I make sure I have you documented for attendance purposes? And happy holidays.
Thank you,
So what
Kirby.
do we do if we call in, Kirby? Do I need to send you an email for my, this is Dawn. Do I need to send you an email for my attendance?
Can you say your name again? Sorry, it cut out.
I'm sorry, this is Dawn Mitchell.
Oh, hi, Dawn. Don't worry about it. I just marked you down. You just told me. Dawn's one of our newest members. Thank you, Dawn.
Sure, not a problem. Thanks. This was fabulous today.
All right, thank you. At this point, I would like to ask if there is a motion that we adjourn today's meeting.
Hillen, so moved.
Thank you, Debbie. Is there a second?
Daniel Ellis, seconded.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate that. All right, if there are no objections, then at this point, we will stand adjourned, and everyone, as the holidays approach, have a great holiday and keep up the great work. Thank you all so much.
Bye, all.